Ready.
And we're live. Hello.
Hello.
Hi. Sorry, I was coming in hot today. It's coming in hot.
You had to make sure your toes weren't ashy.
Huh?
You had to make sure your toes weren't ashy.
Um, no. No.
Well,
No. That's not what I
usually
was doing
we're
at all.
coming in hot.
That's not what I was doing at all. That's not what I'm usually doing either. So, no.
Oh, so it's just me.
I know nothing about that. That is an area of our friendship that remains unexplored, and I gotta tell you, I'm cool with that. I'm
Oh,
okay with that. Uh-oh.
uh-oh. We lost you.
You know what? I opened my notebook that has my notes for today's episode on it, and managed to somehow get it tangled up in the camera cable. Don't ask me about these things. I do not have good explanations for any of these things.
He's fine. He's all fine.
It is. It is all fine. It is fine, and it is good, and it is also well. How are you? Well, first of all, who are you?
I am Alicia Holland. I am one half of the lawyer team at Dahlia Law Group. And in case you did not know already, you are at the Dahlia Law Group weekly live stream where we talk about legacy issues for people like me and you. Who are you?
I am Jill Bates Moore. I am the other half of Dahlia Law Group. Dahlia Law Group is a law firm in Oakland, California, where we do the work of legacy. That's the business that we're in. And by legacy, we mean the things of life that only matter because you were here. That's it. And the tools that we use to do the work of legacy are estate planning tools, they are probate tools, sometimes they are litigation tools, but it is all in service of the work of legacy. So that's who I am. How you doing?
I'm all right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
I
like
think
it.
so. I am. I just went on a spree a little bit
Oh,
ago
huh.
of just reaching out to a few folks that I had been concerned about or hadn't heard from in a minute. So put out some feelers, say, hey, how you doing?
I love that.
And I have a list of a couple other folks in my head. I'm like, I think I will write them letters
Mm-hmm.
because some of them are not texters. But they are also ones that if you pick up that phone, you need to know that you have several hours to invest for that call.
Yeah, there's some folks you are not going to rush them off the phone. And yeah, and it's one of the things that we love about them. So
Yeah. So
tuck in, friend, tuck
some of my
in.
elder aunties, like you gotta be ready to commit time
It's
wise
like you
there.
need stamina. I
So I
love
was like,
it.
maybe I'll send a little letter so I can at least reach out, but if I don't have the few hours that I might need.
Mm-hmm. Ooh, thank you for that reminder. There are a couple people I need to call. So one of them is a talker. He's a talker. He talk day, he talk night. He just talk. But
Talk, talk, talk.
but
And we love it all. Just sometimes you don't always have that kind of time.
yeah, sometimes it gets on your nerves. But
Also that.
but I want to talk to him, and there's somebody else, one of my cousins that I want to check in with. So thank you for that. Yeah, in this time, it's like reaching reaching in it feels as important as reaching out. Some of our, even for folks who are high functioning, who are high capacity, who are super, self sufficient, right? Just this COVID era and all of the stuff and things and bah, of it all.
Yeah.
Um, can really interfere with people's ability, capacity, bandwidth, desire to reach out. So reaching in becomes an important thing. So I'm really glad that you
Oh,
were
I
able to
love
do
that.
that.
Yeah, so that's what I'm up to. How are you?
I am checking in for the real answer. I'm good. Yeah, I am good. I um I have a regular standing appointment with my therapist on Wednesdays, before this live stream, but sometimes, you know, it like therapy can snatch your whole wig off. And so sometimes I'm coming into this live stream like, let me, like, are my bangs attached? Like, what is the status of my edges,
Or like
really?
run into the next room to go find a wig or find a replacement wig
Right. Good
because that
night.
one is down the street now.
Yeah. So, like, I'm coming in hot from the front lawn to retrieve my bangs. So, because the contents of my wallet are all out there. But yeah. So no, I am good. I am grateful for a great many things, and yeah, I am honestly a little confused. Actually, not a little confused. I am a lot confused about today's date being November 18th. I I feel like I need to put out an APB for the entire month of October. I don't know
It's just in
where
the wind.
it just, I mean, was it ever here? Did October RSVP for 2020? Cuz I feel like we haven't heard from October. October is totally unaccounted for.
October's MIA.
Yeah, like what is it all about? Lisa is here. Hey Lisa, it's so good to see you too. She's saying it's good to see us both. It is so good to see you too, my dear. How are
Indeed.
you? How are you? Do you know what happened, Lisa? Do you know what happened to October? Because I got nothing. I got nothing. And that Turkey Day is next week. I'm just like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
and trying to figure out a plan for that. That's like one of the things that happened was it was what today's Wednesday, so I think it was Monday of this week
Mm-hmm.
where my father said, "Oh, so that's next week, huh? I thought it was another week away." I was like, "No, that's why I tried to ask you about it last week because he's coming."
Yeah, my husband and I were talking about, okay, what do you want to do? We have a small quarantine bubble that we have maintained in the COVID era. Like, these are folks whose practices align with ours, whose movements, whose communication we trust, and all of that. So we feel good about getting together on a limited basis, but with all the appropriate stuff, right? Still with all the stuff, because you know I'm an old girl. I'm not playing with these diseases and viruses and stuff. That stuff is real to me. So I'm like, yep, no problem. We'll do
Right.
the things. But yeah, it we're like, so what do we want to do? And my husband is like, mm-mm. And I'm like, mm-mm. And they're like, mm-mm. So I think we're just
That.
gonna be home. I think that's what it's gonna be. Um, Lisa said October is an illusion.
A figment of your imagination.
Right? She said that Lisa says that she is beyond busy, and that is not a humble brag. It's a call for help. What do you need help with, friend? What do you need help with? Put it out there. Write the vision, make it plain.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's what the deal is. That's what's going on here. I read that the 35th year anniversary of the Color Purple movie is coming up next month. So I know that there will be a Color Purple watching in
Yeah.
my future, but that's probably not going to be until next month. Um, there's an HBO special that I want to check out. Between the World and Me, which of course has some relationship to Ta-Nehisi Coates' book
Hmm.
of the same name. That is going to be released later this week or next week, something like that. So I intend to watch that, and I was trying to put together a year-end book list. I promise we're going to get to the topic that we're here to talk about today, but apparently I'm just meandering. So
I'm laughing at your depth of these deep things that you're thinking about because I'm like, you said HBO, and I'm like, oh, yeah, the Fresh Prince of Bel Air reunion is
yes,
coming
also that.
tomorrow.
Yes,
Because I
that.
just had to look at the date. I think it's the 19th. So I think that's
Oh,
tomorrow, where there are going to be both Aunt Vivs there, which has never happened.
never happened. Oh, I'm so excited. Thank you for reminding me about that. I'm so glad you said that out loud.
So I'm like, you got the deep things like the color purple and Between the World and Me. And I'm like, Fresh Prince!
Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Um, oh, Lisa Lisa says, y'all, we're gonna have the same amount of food as per usual for just the four people in her household. Turkey and ham. 5011
Oh,
side dishes. Case of
nice.
desserts. All of that. But you know what, Lisa? I think that that's right. I think that's right and good because part of the whole Turkey Day shenaniganry is about the leftovers. It is about
Yes.
getting to eat again the stuff that was delicious last night. It is about reconfiguring the plate that I made the day before and also the plate that I didn't get to make because I was already full and couldn't, like, Thanksgiving or Turkey Day leftover experimentation is that's where I am.
Yeah,
Yep.
that's really true. And I like
Right.
the idea, like, that is true. And one of the things that I also like about that is in this year where there's so much different and just kind of like in the air confetti style. I like the idea of keeping a hold of as many parts of your family tradition as you can so that
Mm,
it's not like COVID blew up every daggone thing.
yeah. Yeah, no, it's true. I'm also thinking about the fact that there are so many folks who are, I mean, people are still out of work. People are still underemployed. Folks are like there are all kinds of different invisible needs that I imagine that, we can't even access. So I'm thinking about ways to just try to plug in
Mhm.
to be of service in those spaces as well. So wait, so Lisa Lisa says that we should trust her that she is going to be calling us. She's putting her cry for help into the universe and into our text message. So look out for that. Um
Yes.
she
I did
also
hear her say that earlier this morning.
right. Oh, she's reminding us that, or actually, she might be reminding you. I didn't know this. Between the World and Me is also a quote from Richard Wright, and so she wonders if they'll include that in the HBO special. And of
This is why
course,
it's good to have smart friends.
exactly.
Because I ain't know.
And leftovers are life. And making yesterday's plate as today's sandwich and tomorrow's soup. Yes. Okay. I just want to share this one last thing with you because I don't know if I shared it with you already. I might have, but it has just gotten into my head and I cannot stop thinking about it. It's on the topic of leftovers. There is this account that I follow on Instagram. It is called The Spice Suite. The Spice Suite is a business in Washington D.C. It's Black woman owned, and it is all the spices and spice blends and accessories and kitchen stuff and all of this stuff in this really tiny, wonderful little shop. Well, the owner of that shop frequently posts like things that she is cooking. She's not a chef. She's very clear. Like she says, I am not a chef. But so that's not the angle that she's approaching it from. She just shares things that she does and ways that she uses the spices and, you know, that sort of thing. Anyway, she posted the other day a grilled cheese sandwich, but the grilled cheese sandwich had like in the center of it leftover lasagna, and I almost tipped over. Like, because it's a short little video, and it starts with challah bread like in a cast iron skillet. So you know I was in. I was like, oh, what is this about? This is like toasted buttery bread. It's like must see TV for me. Anyway.
Yes, no, you did tell me about it, and
Okay.
it sent me outside because I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have grilled cheese and some soup today. And then you told me about that, and I was like, but I ain't got no lasagna. Now all of a sudden I am way more hungry than this little grilled cheese and soup is gonna cover. So I had to order me a burrito.
How do you go from grilled cheese and soup to this is insufficient? I need to have a burrito.
I just needed something heartier because the grilled cheese and soup wasn't going to get it done. But then it even took a turn when I called, I ordered my little burrito. I had a whole little chat with the lady. I went to pick it up and I go to the burrito shop that's around the corner because that was also what I was thinking. It was cold, dark, and rainy. And so I'm like, what is hearty that I don't have to go far? And I know I won't have to wait in anybody's line to pick it up.
Right.
And so I get there and she's like, yeah, so you got and she goes down this list of things. It's like 4 or 5 burritos. And I'm like, no, that's not me.
Oh, I thought it was. I thought you were gonna say, yeah, I went a little overboard.
And she's like, yeah, no, this is not your order. And I'm like, no, ma'am, I just ordered 1 burrito. And she's like, well, do you have a number? And I'm like, no, you didn't give me a number when I called. And she's like, no, what number did you call? And I was like, huh? Okay. So I looked at my phone and I showed her and she's like, yeah, no, that's the other location. And I was like, apparently this happens a lot since you just knew to ask me what phone number did you call?
Oh my goodness.
So she's like, now tell me what you had.
So you had an orphan burrito waiting for you at some other location. Oh,
The cook is standing there overhearing what I tell her so she can actually make my burrito. And then she gets on the phone to call them to be like, yeah, she over here. Like, she ain't coming for that burrito.
I shed a single sad tear for your orphan burrito.
So thankfully, by the time the phone call happened and my payment, the nice cook had already made my burrito and was giving it to me so I could do my sad little walk of shame out and didn't have to stand there while they just kept looking at me for long. But that's what the grilled cheese lasagna led to.
That is outstanding.
These are the adventures of some of my days.
Right, but I'm loving the whole pickup window, curbside pickup. I'm gonna call you and that's how we're gonna work it out. And the burrito replacement. I have to tell you, post COVID, I'm not gonna be able to give up curbside pickup. I can't go back. I can't. I can't go back. But whole different conversation. Lisa says, yes, grilled bread will get my attention instantly. And
and then put a lasagna in the middle of it.
Listen.
Like a little bowl of soup and a
Listen.
little like only cheese, grilled cheese. It's just not going to stand up to that.
I need you to understand that I must have it. I will have it in my life. I will. It will go in my face. It will.
And not even just sandwich bread, but challah bread, which is,
Right? Like buttery and soft. Like challah bread is mostly butter. Like
and it's all
it's
thick,
practically not even
crunchy.
bread. Like there's just enough bread to make it puff. The rest of it is butter. It's butter.
Mm.
Oh, Lisa's cracking up at the Walker burrito shame.
With
Okay.
my bag, with my one little burrito in it. A mess. And then when I got outside and saw my car, how it was parked, and I was like, who drove you here? Like, it's like half on the sidewalk, not even in a parking
Oh my
space.
god.
I just decided to pull up and stop. It's a mess.
It is so funny how you get so hungry you give yourself tunnel vision where like all you can see is the
One
food.
for my burrito. Apparently, I
Okay.
might have had a crazed look on my face because when I was going in, there was a lady who had a small child who like gathered the child closely. So I might have been looking a little crazy eyed and didn't realize it.
This has taken me down.
You're
No,
welcome. Thanks for coming,
no,
y'all.
I know we definitely did not talk about this.
Well, that was the follow up from the lasagna. And then I had to just focus on eating the burrito. It didn't feel safe to call you back to tell you
Yeah,
about
no, clearly. No worries. No worries. Oh my goodness. Okay. Believe it or not, we have a legacy topic today for the legacy live stream. We really do. Um, Lisa's got to run to a meeting. To catch the replay. Listen, we do have a topic today. This is the legacy live stream. We actually do have a legacy topic. And we will get you out of here. If anybody is watching us live, we will get you out of here on within the lunch hour as we do about like 97% of the time. Our on-time performance is actually pretty good. But here's the topic for today. Today we are talking about what the lawyers call intestate succession. You got to wobble your head in a very aristocratic way when you say it. Intestate succession it basically means this is what happens to your property if you pass away without a will or without a trust. Okay, so the first thing to know is even if you haven't already written down a legacy and estate plan, you already have one. The state has taken care of it for you. That is what intestate succession is. So, for some of us,
to you.
yeah, some of us, that might be a sigh of relief. That's done. Until we find out what happens, right? And so maybe we might want to make some different choices. But what we're going to be talking about today is that because and we titled the episode. Wait, it doesn't. Everything just goes to my spouse, right? Or to my kids, right? Because a lot of people think that, and the answer is maybe. It kind of depends on. Well, no, it doesn't. Kind of depend. It does depend on the situation. And so we are going to talk through those situations. And what we hope you will take away today is what is just an understanding of how property passes in California when you don't have a will, you don't have a trust. One, so you just know that. Excuse me. And two, so that you can have a sense of priorities, right? For whether that's okay with you, right? And well, not priorities for whether that's okay with you, but knowing that information, deciding if that's all right with you, and based on that, setting your priorities for how you do your legacy and estate planning. So it's not all bad, I promise. And we are going to rip through it in a really straightforward and hopefully efficient way. So here's how we're going to do it. I'm going to give you the scenario and I'm going to tell you how the property passes. And then Alicia's going to give you, and I'll probably chime in because I just can't help myself. Like, I just can't be restrained. So we will talk about how efficient probate might be in that situation. So the one thing to know going in is that anytime you do not have an estate plan, anytime you don't have a trust or some tools set up that will keep you out of probate court, then there's a high likelihood that you're going to be in probate court. That is not necessarily bad. If you want to talk through the whys and hows of why that is not necessarily bad, click back a couple of episodes to the episode where we talk about the ins and outs of probate. Did I forget anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, then let's get into it. Okay, first scenario. All of these first scenarios are going to be scenarios where we are talking about a married couple or a couple in a registered domestic partnership. Okay, and of course we're California lawyers, so this is all based on California law. But I think a number of these concepts are going to translate. So even if you're not in California, I think this is worth your time. But that's just what I think. Okay, first scenario. Married couple or registered domestic partners who do not have kids, who do not have surviving parents, or one of them has passed away, and the one who has passed away does not have surviving parents. They don't have any kids. There are no siblings, nieces, or nephews. All right, so this is really the situation where we've got just the couple, and the one of them who has passed away doesn't really have surviving family. Okay, what happens to the property? In this situation, the property of the of the spouse or partner who has passed away goes in two ways. The community property all goes to the surviving spouse. Community property, you'll probably remember, is property that we have amassed together during the time that we were married or registered domestic partners. That applies to debts too. But anyway, so all the community property goes to the surviving spouse. In this instance, all of the separate property goes to the surviving spouse as well. What do you think, Holland?
So spouse gets everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So in terms of the efficiency of probate or the ease or expense of probate, what do you think?
Easy. That one is going to be fairly quick. In California, for instance, there's even a summary process that we have for this scenario that is cheaper and faster to basically just confirm everything over to the spouse, keep it pushing.
Yep. So, second scenario, we're going to mix it up a little bit.
Ooh, spicy.
Same married couple or registered domestic partners, but they don't, one of them passes away, because that is our scenario, right? Like, in order for something to pass after somebody dies, like.
We're not talking about simultaneous death yet.
No. Thank you. No children, but there are surviving parents, siblings, and or nieces and nephews of the one who passed away. In this instance, the community property goes to the surviving spouse. And I'm going to invite you to pick up on a theme. Okay, with regard to the community property. So each of us, as you know, as half of the couple, has a 1/2 interest in the community property. So, of course, the one of us who is surviving keeps their 1/2 interest in the community property. The deceased spouse's 1/2 interest in the community property goes to the surviving spouse. So the spouse or partner takes that. The separate property is split. Half of the separate property goes to the surviving spouse. Half of the separate property is split between the parents of the deceased spouse or the siblings, nieces, or nephews, depending on the situation. The thing to take away is that if there are even if we don't have kids, but there are other surviving family members, then it is possible that the surviving spouse has to split that separate property with other surviving family members. Okay, so knowing that as the scenario, what do you think about the relative ease or efficiency of probate here?
Middle ground.
Yeah.
Like, it might be easy and it might be more complex, because depends on what level that we land in there for those other surviving family members, how kind of entangled and involved that probate might be. So if it's just one surviving parent or just the surviving parents, then it's relatively easy. I mean, you can't use that summary proceeding, but it can go fairly smooth because you only have a couple other people in the mix there. And the surviving spouse can be the one that's doing the work of the probate and just has to notify those folks. If we have to go beyond the level of surviving parents, though, and this person has a bunch of siblings, or maybe siblings that predeceased but left children, and so then there are a bunch of little snake tails that end up developing on this thing, then we might end up having to find and gather a whole bunch of other folks for that other half of the separate property that's going to. And so that is not the most complex of probates, but it certainly isn't the easiest.
Yeah.
So that's how I land with in the middle.
I get that. That makes sense. Because we're going out of household. Right?
That's a good way of putting it.
So, yeah. So they don't, like, the loved ones that we're dealing with are not ones that that live here, or whoever potentially lived here. So, all right. And I wonder, is it fair to say that the further you go out of household, the more complicated the probate has the potential to be? Or is that overstating it?
I think that's a maybe, because
Okay.
that could easily be true. But in some instances, if you have a fairly connected, close family,
That's fair.
then it might not be as complicated.
That's true, because also if you have people in household who,
Sometimes they're the ones that make the mess.
right? Yeah, no, it's true. It's true. Okay, I walk it back. All right. So the next scenario, we are still with our married couple or our registered domestic partners. So I am going to invite you to guess what happens to the deceased partner or spouse's half of the community property. I'm just going to invite you to guess before I get to it. I know, right?
I know.
You were totally that kid, weren't you? You were that student. Really?
I hated talking in school.
Really?
I was so shy and quiet. I never volunteered, even though I knew the answer. Like, I would write it on my paper or say it to myself, but I was not a hand raiser.
I was always talking. Always.
Well, I would be talking to my neighbor, but
Yeah.
not like the
Yeah.
lessons.
Yeah. I mean, my grades were fine, but all of my report cards were like, they had conduct issues because I was constantly talking. And I would talk to anybody. It didn't make any difference.
That uses too much glue and a few talks too muches. But usually it was a surprise because my teachers would see my scores on the test and be like, I didn't know she knew all that. Because they
Like
never
she
heard
was
from
paying
me.
attention.
I'd be like, well, I've been darn.
I didn't even know she was still in this class.
Right.
Yeah. No, all of mine. I think my mom might still have them. She's like, she just talks. She'll talk to anybody. I don't even think she cares. Like, she'll just. Anyway, okay. So our next scenario is our married couple or registered domestic partner couple who have at least one, who have one child. They have one kid, or they have, or that child has passed away, but they have grandchildren through
Is it a
that
common
child.
kid? It's a common kid? Like their kid together?
Yes, this is. It is. It doesn't anticipate. I'm not anticipating stepchildren
Okay.
here. Yeah, I'm not anticipating stepchildren, even though I don't want to dive into the granulars. Like, the California probate code treats siblings of the half blood relationship the same as, well, not just children, but relatives of half blood relation, the same as quote unquote whole blood relation. So, but I'm not anticipating stepchildren here.
Got it.
Okay. In this situation where the important thing to focus on is that there is one child, okay? Or grandchildren through one child. It can be multiple grandchildren, but one child is what we're talking about. In this instance, we are dividing that separate property in half, and half of it is going to go to the surviving spouse, and half of it is going to go to that one living child, or the grandchildren through that child if that child has passed away. What do you think is going to happen to the community, the one half community property interest?
It goes to the spouse or surviving registered domestic partner.
Look at you. Look at you. Paying attention.
Gold
Look at
stars
that. Look
for
at that.
me.
Pin a rose on your nose. Yes, exactly. So the one half interest in the community property that belongs to the half of the couple who passed away, that goes to the surviving spouse, and the separate property is split half half. I think this one is one that takes people by surprise, because folks who are married or in registered domestic partnerships, I know that, I mean, clients of ours who routinely are surprised by this, and they tell us so. So in terms of the ease or the relative ease or efficiency of probate in this situation, what do you think?
It's like there was the easy of the spouse with no kids and other relatives. This is still easy, just one click over from that level of easy. So you don't get to use the summary process here. You're going to need the full-on probate. So it's going to take a little longer. It's going to cost a little bit more, but kind of our levels of where we need to go are not as far, because we're in all likelihood still in household or still within the immediate nuclear family. So even if, for instance, that child is an adult, it may take a little bit more if the child or the grandchildren that are the children of that child, if they are minors, then there might be a little bit of extra process there, because as minor children, we may need guardians involved on their behalf, because certain things we don't put in the name of children directly when they're underage. And so that might give you like 2 clicks over on the easy dial instead of 1.
Got it. So I hear you saying the relative ease of this one just kind of, it kind of depends on who well, not who, but maybe the ages, and
Really
the ages of the heirs, and also whether they're grandchildren or whether they're the children of, or I'm sorry, the child of the person who has passed away.
Yeah.
All right, all right. The next and last scenario for our married or couple or registered domestic partner couple is obviously one person in the couple has passed away, and they had 2 or more kids. They are survived by 2 or more kids or grandchildren from 2 or more kids. So in this scenario, we actually divide it into thirds. So here, the surviving spouse takes 1/3 of the separate property generally, and this is all generally. I mean, because there are any number of ways that you can shift these things around. So please don't hit us with the you know
But
don't
it's
come
one
for us
time
on the
that happened to my
morphed
cousin.
hypotheticals. Yeah. But in this general scenario, we've got 1/3 of the separate property that's going to go to the surviving spouse, in addition to the 1/2 of the community property. And then 2/3 is going to go and be split between the surviving children, or if any of the children are deceased, then and they have children, then those grandchildren. And so it's going to be broken up according to their shares. But the thing to take away here is that if a couple has more than one child, then the separate property for the surviving spouse is not half, it is 1/3. And so if that might be fine. I mean, listen,
I think it's important to say it's also not all.
right,
Because
it's
since that's mostly the assumption is like my spouse gets it all,
mm-hmm.
definitely not that. And it's not even half.
Yeah, exactly. But no matter how many children they have, the community property interest, unless there's some other agreements or something else happens, we're not talking about the something else. In just this pure situation, the community property goes to the surviving spouse. So in terms of the relative ease of or efficiency of probate, what do you think here? It doesn't seem to me like it's all that much different from the other child scenario, but you tell me.
Yeah, I think it's really like that same, like at least one click over from easy and possibly a couple of more. And it really is dependent on the number of folks that we're talking about and the ages of
Okay.
those folks that we're talking about there. Because if it's couple with 5 kids, for
Mm-hmm.
instance, then that's more complicated than just the two
Mm-hmm.
because we've got to parse it out a little bit differently. And some of what can end up making it a little bit more complicated is also depending on the types of assets that we're talking about that are a part of this probate. Because if we've got a house, for instance, that's some interest in that is separate property, and now you've got surviving spouse that owns portion of that house with, say, 5 surviving children, and figuring some of that stuff out, that could be a little bit more complicated. Or if
Yeah,
there are kids with surviving grandkids and all that. So you might end up with a lot more people in the mix that can make it get more complicated, even though the basic structure of it is not any more complicated.
got it. So I think the before we move on to the scenario where we don't have a couple anymore, I think a fair roll up here is that, one, there are very few situations where everything, all of it, 100% goes to the surviving spouse or partner. That's one thing. And then the other thing is that the community property, if there is community property, the presumption is that community property interest of the partner or spouse who has passed away will go to the surviving spouse. What were you going to say, friend?
I just think it's really important in this part to flag that when we are saying partner, it has to be a registered domestic
Yeah,
partnership for these things that we are talking about. So
yeah,
just because, like, I know that people's family structures look different, and you may have somebody that is a life partner that you are doing life with and have for however many number of years, pick your number. And if it is not a registered domestic partnership or a marriage where there's the government certificate around that, then these rules don't apply there.
yeah. I think it's a really important reminder that California law does not. I'm sorry, I don't know why my eyebrows are itching, but they are. Whatever. Um,
That superstition thing, like when your hand itches or your
um,
eye twitches.
I don't
Like, what does the
know.
eyebrow mean?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I wish it weren't happening when there's a camera in my face. But in any event, yeah, the law does not see family as expansively as we do socially, um, and so yeah, that is an important thing to keep in mind. And California does not have common law marriage. Some states do. And so that note about, if the government's not in your relationship applies in places where there are no common law types of recognitions, but some states do have some common law recognitions. And so of course that's going to be an area where you should probably talk to a family lawyer in your state for that. So, our next scenario is where there is no surviving spouse, there is no marriage, and there is no registered domestic partnership. And the reason I broke it out those three ways is because in this scenario, the person who has passed away in this scenario could be the surviving spouse, right? Like their spouse has already passed away, or they could be single, right? Or they could be the registered domestic partner who is a survivor, right? So so situation number one: there are kids, one or more, or there are grandkids of a deceased child. In that situation, there is no community property, right? Because community property only results when there is a legal marriage or a registered domestic partnership. And so there's no community property to be thinking about. So we're just thinking about the property. And in this instance, when this unmarried person is person who is not domestic in a domestic partner, a registered domestic partnership, easy for me to say, but there are children, the property goes 100% to the kids or to the grandkids of a deceased child. In this instance, I mean, is it possible for probate to be complicated?
Yeah, it's possible, but it's not likely.
Okay.
I mean, it's that same scenario if we have a whole bunch of children and grandchildren that we can't locate people or something of that nature,
Mm-hmm.
then just by the it's more the complication is not in the probate process,
Mm-hmm.
it's in the people relations
Got it.
of it all.
Gotcha.
But as far as the paperwork and what needs to happen, that's fairly straightforward.
Yeah. Probate can be really efficient here. Um,
Particularly
and
if they're all adults.
right. And it may not even be necessary depending on, depending on how the property is held, like what we are talking about as quote unquote the property. But even if the probate necessity is minimal, right? Or you have the option for whether to have probate or not have probate, it might be worth doing it depending on, whether there are creditors and, and how you want to handle that. So, but the takeaways here are if an unmarried person who is not in a registered domestic partnership with a surviving spouse or partner passes away, then but they have kids, it's going to the kids, right? And even if it's going to the living kids, and if they have children who have died before them, but those kids have kids, it's going to be those grandkids are going to be included in the split. All right, next scenario, same setup, but there are no living kids and no living grandkids, but there are surviving parents. In this scenario, property goes to the parents. 100%. So if both parents are surviving, then it goes to them split. If only one parent is surviving, then it goes to that parent in its entirety.
Yep. Easy.
Probate is easy here.
Yeah. I'm like, since we're only going to have but so many parents, I struggle to find a way for this one to get complicated.
Well, I mean, so parents doesn't necessarily mean parents who are together.
True.
Right. So, I mean, I think the caveat or the note to take with all of these is that if the interpersonal relationships of the heirs, and by heirs I mean people who are surviving the person who has passed away and who are receiving part of the estate, if those interpersonal relationships are complicated, then that complication carries over into how this all gets handled. So if both parents are surviving, but they're like the War of the Roses parents, then this is going to be complicated.
Yeah. It's like the people and the papers.
Right.
Like the papers on this one, not complicated. The people, like if they are also not complicated, then we're sliding this thing through like it's greased with Crisco.
Yeah.
If the people are not quite as Crisco'd, then we might have some jagged edges on this thing.
If you got no greased people, then we might get hung up.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, the people can always make it complicated. So there you go. I really hope that was news to somebody. Like, I hope that somebody is living in a way where the people have never made it complicated for them. And so, anyhow. The next scenario is where we don't have children. We don't have surviving grandchildren. We do not have surviving parents, but we do have surviving siblings. What happens here is the estate is split in full among the surviving siblings. And so I think the probate answer here is the same, right? Like that the papers are probably going to be fine, but well, I will ask you, what's our probate situation here?
What you said.
Okay.
Like paper versus people. Like papers are easy. It depends on the people if it stays easy or if it gets like some extra clicks on the difficulty scale.
Got it. All right. So then the next scenario really addresses what happens if there are no surviving siblings. So in this situation, there are no surviving parents. There are no surviving grandchildren. No surviving children, no surviving grandchildren, no surviving parents, no surviving siblings. What do? We look for, believe it or not, we look for surviving grandparents. We look for surviving grandparents, or, then aunts and uncles, right? And in this situation, the estate is split 100% among those survivors. I hope that you can kind of see, I hope that whoever's watching this can kind of see the way that the law moves down the family tree, right? So we start with us, and then we go to our kids. If we don't find our kids, we go looking for grandchildren. If we don't find grandchildren, then we go back up to the parent level and start all over again. We start with our parents, right? Then we go looking for their kids, right? Which is our siblings, right? And then down the, on down the line to nieces and nephews and so on and so forth. So the law is really looking for, branches on your family tree in a very routine way, right? In a very formula driven kind of way, to get your stuff to somebody who is connected to you. If we are this far out, Alicia, on the family tree where we're looking for surviving grandparents, then tell me, I don't imagine that the idea, like you said, like the papers of the probate are going to be necessarily any more or less difficult. Tell me though, what types of complications there might be, because we're pretty far afield at this point.
Yeah. So one point on the last thing you said right before you asked me that question is when we're doing that searching through the family tree thing, we also stop at the first level where we find people.
Yes.
And so if we find some kids or grandkids, then we don't have to go looking for the siblings and the nieces and nephews and on down the line. So in that hierarchy, we're stopping at the first level where we find people. And that's where we start figuring out how many people so we can do the division.
Yeah.
There. Now, as far as the complication for if we're at this level where we're at the surviving grandparents, which one of the things that I think complicated wise, the papers themselves are going to be the same papers, but the paper trail that you have to put in those papers can make it a little bit more complicated, because what the court would be looking for here is, why is everything going to the surviving aunt and uncle or the grandparent, for instance? And so being able to lay out who all those people are at those other levels and giving the history of those people is going to be something that's necessary. So it's, if there were a spouse and some children and grandchildren and parents and siblings and nieces and nephews before we got to the grandparent level, then identifying who those people are, that they are deceased, when they were deceased, who their offshoot people were. So for the siblings, for instance, who the nieces and nephews were, that person is deceased, when they were deceased. So it really is giving like the family history in those papers. And the court is going to be looking to check those boxes off to see how we got like 5-6 levels down in this table. What is it? The table of consanguination?
Don't do that. Don't do that to people. That's not right. So, I mean, no, that is absolutely right. And
so intestate succession, it's one of those like, wait a minute, we're like 7 rungs up the ladder. How did we get here?
How did we get here? Yeah.
Explain rungs 1 through 6 to me and show your work.
Yeah.
And so that's a place where the papers can end up being a little bit more complicated, just because you need all of that in those papers. The other place where I think you have a potential for the complication is if we have gotten this far, then getting to the person that is the one that's actually filing the papers, and that person may not even be in the mix or readily apparent that you next up in line. So you need to be the one that does this paperwork and figuring all of that out. And so those are, I think, the places where it's not on its face more complicated, but just if we are this far out, then we may not even necessarily know, like, oh, I need to do this. So I'm thinking of somebody that came to us and it was like a cousin of theirs that they were like, apparently I'm next in line and need to do a probate. What do I do? And that's such a lengthy relationship family wise. You expect some steps in between. You may not anticipate like, oh, I might be the heir of my cousin.
Right. But you absolutely could, based on the conversation that we've had here. I think one more thing to add here, and we're pretty much at the end, and we're also at the end of our lunch hour, is that when you get out this far, some of the other practical considerations might take you into other legal proceedings. So, for example, if we are looking for surviving grandparents, then our grandparents might be elderly, right? But they also might not be in. Not all grandparents are in top health. We hope that they will be. But if they're not, you might be looking for things like, folks who might be under the power of a conservatorship or something like that. And so there might be some other legal proceedings that also happen in the probate court that you might have to take a look at. So it might not be just about the probate itself, where the ownership of the property is changing hands. You might have some other practical considerations to contend with. So I'm not going to worry about going out beyond looking for surviving grandparents, except to say that if we don't have surviving grandparents, which we might not, or surviving, aunts and uncles and that sort of thing, then the California law does allow us to go looking for stepchildren and in-laws. Like that's what happens next. Those things don't necessarily complicate the procedural, the probate as a procedural matter, but some of the other interpersonal things, interpersonal relationships, and other practical considerations, those same ideas I think apply here. So, given that we are at the end of our lunch hour, I am gonna say maybe we don't repeat those for this purpose. But if you have questions, always questions, concerns, thoughts, ideas, that you want to run past us, that you want to pose to us, we are happy to be available for those things. Alicia, is there
topics you would like us to talk about?
Oh yeah, indeed. Yes, yes, yes. Do you want to close us out? Are there any, well, one, are there any parting thoughts or advice that you have? And then two, do you want to close us out?
Yeah, my only other parting thought is just kind of a fun fact thing to know, that if we run into a person that either has a very small circle of family, or we've gone through and through and through and through and through and absolutely run out of people, then the state even has a solution for that.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
Which is a setup. And it is, there is something that is called an escheat to the state, which means the state gets to claim it.
People don't care about this.
It's rare. I said it was a fun fact.
Actually, no, it's true. People do care about that. I take that back.
Trivia.
Yeah, no, I take that back.
And so that is a thing to know. And so the parting thought is, because we usually try to give you a piece of homework. And so your piece of homework might be to think about this scenario and what it looks like if there isn't a will. And it might say, if you don't like the way that this lays out, or this is not what you would want it to look like, then that's where we need to circle back with what tool is available for you to avoid this scenario being the scenario that's at play.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And I know lots is overwhelming right now. There's a lot to deal with and contend with. So hopefully this little conversation has given you some ways to prioritize. You might have heard something in here that led you to think, oh, it's going to my spouse and my kids? Yeah, that's fine enough. I get it. There's some process. They have to go through probate, whatever. That might be fine with me. And so rather than focusing on trying to put together my trust right now or trying to put together a will right now, even though those things are advised, I'm not telling you not to do that. So do not go tell your friends that Jill and Alicia said, oh, you don't have to do that. You can just go through probate. That is not what we said. But you might prioritize your personal authorization documents here, right? If you listen to this and say, oh, the stuff is going to be fine. I didn't even know there was a process to handle the stuff if I didn't have a trust or a will or some other plan put together. Learning that there's a process for the stuff, I'm good to go. Focus on your personal authorization documents then at the very least. So your advanced healthcare directive, your durable powers of attorney, that sort of stuff. Go back to the earlier episodes and see what we're talking about there if those words do not make sense to you.
Exactly.
All right, y'all. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Thanks for listening. Thanks for engaging. And yeah, we'll see you here again next Wednesday at 12:30 Pacific Standard Time. Thanks for spending your lunch hour with us. If the people need to reach us, Alicia, how do they do it?
You can find us on Instagram at Dahlia Law Group. You can find us on the interwebs at www.dahlialawgroup.com, and you can find us at email at dlg@dahlialawgroup.com.
Thanks, y'all.
And on the website, it has all our contact information.
Absolutely. Thanks, y'all. Have an excellent rest of the week and a wonderful weekend. All right.
Yes.